Hey everyone, it's Kelly. I am back with a new 12 by 12 process video, and this video is actually something I recorded a very long time ago. I recorded it back in April, and it was when I was part of the Cut Shop design team. The Cut Shop was sponsoring the CSI challenge, which is a scrapbooking challenge, and a few of the design team members made layouts for that challenge, and the layouts were posted on the CSI blog. And I came across this layout on my computer the other day and realized that I never shared the video. So that is what I am going to be sharing with you today. So I used two cut file images for this layout, and I am using the Happy Little Clouds cut file and the Let's Do Summer cut file. And right now I'm just taking a little time to slice out the images that I want to use from those cut file sets. So I'm going to use one cloud from the Happy Little Clouds cut file set, and then also the Summer Lovin' words from the Let's Do Summer cut file set. If you are unfamiliar with the slice feature, basically what it does is it removes the section of the cut file that you're wanting to use. So that way you don't have to cut the entire cut file set. So by doing this, I can cut just that individual cloud and not have to cut every part of the cut file. To use the slice feature, what you do is you need to insert a shape, lay the shape on top of the part of the cut file that you're wanting to use, select the shape, and while holding down the shift key, select a different portion of the cut file, go down to the slice button, which is on the bottom right hand side of the screen, and just click on it. And then it will remove that section of the cut file that you're wanting to use. Now I've just inserted a square and resized it to 12 by 12, so that way I have a visual reference to the size of my scrapbook layout. And now I'm just going to start working on sizing the images and getting them to the correct proportions, so that way they will fill up and fill in the areas of the layout that I am wanting to use them for. Now, when I made this layout back in April, I did record a Cricut Design Space tutorial for that layout, and I had actually started to put together the process video, saved it to my computer, and just totally forgot about it. And when I went back to finish editing this video, I must have deleted the original Cricut Design Space tutorial because I had originally recorded it in Cricut Design Space 3.0 beta. So I had to re-record it. So if you're curious as to why this is using Cricut Design Space 3.0 and not using the beta version, because I had made this layout so long ago, I had to re-record this portion of the process video, which I just did today. Okay, so getting back to what's actually happening on the screen here, I have duplicated that cloud image, and then I'm going down to the contour feature. I want to change this cloud to a solid cloud image and not have that heart. So I selected the heart on that small window that had popped up, and that essentially removes the heart from the cut file image and turns it into a solid shape. Now, just to help me be able to see these cloud images a little bit better, since they are the same color, I'm going to change one of them just to purple, just so that way I have an idea of how large the cloud is, because they were the same color, they were blending in together, and I was having a hard time telling if one was a little bit bigger than the other, if they were about the same size. Now I have inserted a heart. I want to weld a second heart onto my title just to help fill in that area next to the word lovin'. I did unlock the proportions of the heart just by using that little padlock symbol to the bottom left-hand side of the shape. I wanted to squish the heart a little bit to make it look a little bit more like the heart that was already included in the cut file set. And then once I have it sized and shaped the way that I like, I'm going to select the heart and the cut file image set and then go down to weld, and that will link those images together so that way they cut as one shape. Now I want to cut all of these images on white cardstock, so I need all of the images on the design screen to be the same color, so that way Cricut will recognize that I only need to load a single mat into the Explorer. So I am using the sync tab on the right hand side of the screen, and I just dragged that purple cloud up with the other images, and that will change all of the images to the same color. That way the Cricut will know that I just need to cut them all at the same time. All right, so now I'm ready to start the scrapbook process, and this is the photo that I'm going to be using, and oh my goodness, look at all that 3-year-old cuteness in that photo. I can hardly even stand it. But this was a photo that was taken a long time ago, and it was taken at my parents' house. My parents have a pool, and I love the bright colors in this photo, and it just looks like summertime to me. So I had not documented this photo yet, so I thought this was the perfect time You may have noticed at the very beginning of the video, I did include the CSI challenge for the month that we participated. And there was a color scheme and a sketch and some different elements that you had to use for the layout. So I grabbed a bunch of papers from my stash. Right now I have the blue pattern paper in the background. It's from Close to My Heart. I had a couple gray patterns from Hip Kit Club. And then I'm also going to bring in some Heidi Swapp pattern papers from the Serendipity collection. I don't know if anybody remembers that collection. It's quite a few years old, but I do end up using a lot of it on this layout. Now I want to let you know before we get too far into this process video that I do have a couple, I guess you could call them disasters that happen as I'm making this. I have a mixed media disaster that you will be seeing shortly. And then I also have a hand stitching disaster that happens a little bit after that. So it was actually my third attempt at creating this layout that it actually came to be. So right now I'm just really working on my layers, just trying to get the overall design of the layout. And I do use the sketch more as inspiration. I kind of take my own twist on the sketch. I will have more information on my blog post, which I will link to in the description below. So you'll be able to see the CSI challenge photo close up. And then I also go into a little bit more description on how my layout ended up coming together with that challenge and the different areas of the challenge that I used to create the layout. So I've added a couple layers behind the photo. I added a layer of white cardstock and now I'm adding a layer of vellum. I do have a couple yellow patterns that I'm going to be using on the background also, and those are from the Heidi Swapp Serendipity collection. And it was actually part of a file folder. I think it was intended to be used as a mini album, but I just tore it in half and used it as layers behind the photo, just like you would use a pattern paper. I also added a scallop acetate piece underneath those yellow layers, and that again is from the Heidi Swapp Serendipity collection. This word summer is from a retired Close to My Heart collection, as is that blue background that I have for right now. That's one of the papers that I end up not using because of my mixed media disaster. But the yellow on this word summer was a little darker than the yellow on the pattern papers. So I'm taking some acrylic paint and I added some paint on top of the word summer. And then I'm going to come in with my gelatos and I'm just trying to alter the color on that word because I thought I was going to use it as a portion of my title, but I end up not being able to get it matched close enough. So I decide ultimately not to use it, but that's a little bit later on in the video. Okay, so I'm going to bring everything back in, and now is when I'm going to start the mixed media portion of this layout. And I'm going to start by adding a layer of white gesso to the background. And I really like this pattern paper. It already has almost a watercolor look to it, so I just wanted to add a little bit more of that element to the background. So I thought that I would use some mists in the packaging technique to just create a little bit more of a watercolor effect. I end up really not liking it and I end up setting it aside and not using it. I did not throw the paper away because I feel like a lot of the times I can use it for something else. I can either punch shapes out of it or just use it as a background for a cut file set or just something along those lines. So I have saved it, but I'm not going to end up using it on this layout. And part of the reason I think that I don't like how the watercolor is going on the background is because my packaging was really crinkled and I didn't really think about it, but it ended up adding a funny texture to the mixed media portion of this layout. It just didn't go on as smoothly as I would have liked. Here I've grabbed a new piece of packaging thinking that maybe I can salvage it, and I'm adding more color on top of the mixed media I've already added on there. And I think this is when it just really starts to go downhill. I end up adding too much color and it just ends up being too dark. And it actually looks a little bit better me looking at it now than it did as I was making it. So I'm not sure, maybe if I went back, maybe I would like it a little bit better, but I'm really happy with how this layout turns out in the end. I thought maybe adding some gelato would also help smooth that out, but it doesn't. So I grabbed the second sheet of this pattern paper that was included in this collection, and I am attempting the same thing, but I'm being a little bit more cautious about how I'm adding my color. I'm trying not to add too much and just kind of add it in little spots across the layout. So pretty much just on top of where the photo is going to be and underneath where the photo is going to be. And I'm much happier with how the mixed media turns out on this layout, but this is where I end up having my hand stitching disaster, and I'm not happy with how the hand stitching turns out. So I bring in this large sunburst stencil from Heidi Swapp, and I'm going to use a pencil and just trace along those sun rays. And then I'm going to come in with some white embroidery floss and stitch those sun rays onto the background. Now, what I did not like about the hand stitching is I felt like it looked almost like a spider web instead of sun rays. And I think that if I went back with yellow thread and completed it, it would look more like sun rays. But I didn't want to have to try to find a yellow to match the yellow that I was already using on this layout. And I thought that it might be too much yellow, so I set it aside and I end up grabbing a different blue pattern paper. And this blue pattern paper is from the Serendipity collection from Heidi Swapp also. So now I'm just going to start working on adhering everything down. I use a lot of different adhesives for this layout. I use liquid adhesive, I use my ATG, I use a small tape runner, I use pop dots, just kind of a little bit of everything. And I want to get all the layers set up, so I am going to go ahead and get that acetate piece adhered down. And I do use just a little bit of liquid adhesive just right along the edge of the acetate piece where you won't see the adhesive line. I do bring in a couple frames. Actually, that's just one frame that I trimmed in half, and I'm going to use it on the left and the right hand side of the layout. I have brought in a couple other items from a couple other collections. Those labels, I believe, are from the Citrus Bliss collection, which is a Pink Paisley collection. And then the florals that I have on the bottom right hand side, that's from an Amy Tangerine collection, and I believe it's the Yes Please collection. That little acetate piece that I have down in that bottom right hand cluster was just the leftover portion from the acetate that I have on the top of the layout. That was a 12-inch acetate piece that I had trimmed down at the very beginning of the video and decided just to use the little leftover piece in that bottom cluster. I'm going to use liquid adhesive to adhere the chipboard frames down just because they are a little bit heavier weight. And then once I had those chipboard frames down, my photo was kind of wanting to bow in the center because the chipboard on the edges were lifting it up. So I am going to bring in some fun foam and add it just to the center of the background where my photo is going to rest. So that way the photo does not want to dip down. Now I'm going to add a couple flare buttons to the layout, and those are from the Pretty Little Studio Here Comes the Sun collection designed by Marie Capistran. And I'm going to add a cloud flare up near the clouds and then a sun flare down on the bottom right hand side with that cluster. I'm going to go ahead and get my title adhered down, and I'm just going to leave that white, and that is from that cut file set that I showed you at the very beginning of the video in the Cricut Design Space tutorial. Now I did want to add a little bit more dimension to the title, so I ended up cutting it a second time, and then when I adhered it down, I just slightly offset it just to give a little bit of a shadow effect. It's hard to see on the camera here, but you will be able to see it a little bit better in the still shots at the end. Next, I was really trying to decide what I'm going to do to embellish. I had actually walked away from the layout for a little while thinking it was done, and when I came back, it just felt really bare. So I'm going through my stash, and I grabbed quite a few Amy Tangerine products, and this camera was actually a clear sticker that I just am placing onto white cardstock and fussy cutting around it because I wanted it to stand out a little bit more on the layout and keep its true colors. So I'm going to use that as an embellishment piece, and then I'm also going to use that floral sticker that I've added to the right hand side of the photo. I'm going to use some tiny word stickers, and those are also from Amy Tangerine, and they are from older collections. I'm not even sure how old this collection is. It's been in my stash for a really long time. Now, because I had so much color going on to the right hand side of the photo with that teal and green floral sticker, I felt like I needed to add a little bit of color to the left hand side of the photo. So I came across this chevron sticker, and again, it was a clear sticker, so I'm just adding it to white cardstock and fussy cutting around it just so that way it keeps its true color. Because if you add clear stickers on top of colored pattern paper, it does change their appearance slightly. Now, I don't need this chevron to be quite that long, so I'm just going to trim off a little bit of the excess, and I'm just going to tuck that in. It almost looks like an extra layer behind the photo. Next, I'm going to add another sticker to the top right next to the cluster that I have going on by the photo. I'm going to adhere down that floral sticker, but I'm only going to add liquid adhesive to the bottom portion because I liked how it was raising up as it kind of moved across the top of the page. I felt like it just added a little bit of dimension. And to be sure that that dimension stayed, once I get this into a page protector, I did add a pop dot to the top of that floral piece. I'm going to adhere down just the final touches, and then this layout is complete. I do want to mention again that this is not the current challenge that is happening with the CSI challenge. This was a challenge from way back early in the spring, but I did want to go ahead and share this layout because I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's just so bright and cheerful and summery. I do have quite a few summer layouts and summer projects that I do want to share before I move on to my fall and Halloween projects. So I'm hoping to get those all uploaded within the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for another process video. I will be back again soon. Thanks.